So my projects was to generate interest in farmers. They have to touch equipment, they have to see the bales, they got to be seeing how this fits their local economy. So working in the southwest quadrant of the province, there's family members that work in the chemical industry. They understand what it means in terms of jobs. And really, the question we've had for the last 5 years, how come you're not ready? And now, fortunately, with the turn of events, the discussion is changing. Oh my God, we got to do this. So we're very confident. I think the work we've done goes a long way to facilitate options, and it eases the discussions. So we'll get going. So these were some of the partners we've had over the years. And I started in this in 2008. We did a greenhouse gas cap and trade program for VOFA. Guess what? I heard this morning, and I think I heard it again this afternoon. We're going to have to get into life cycle analysis. We're going to have to manage carbon. And what these projects offer is a permanent home for that carbon. At the end of its useful life, the carbon is still sequestered. But in terms of all of these partners, they either provided in-kind support or actual cash. In the middle line, you will see that the OFA is partnered with La Coop Fidelity because we both put the application forward under the cluster. And it was deemed that there would only be one project, so it became the OFA lead with the project, and the work is done in Southwest Ontario. But Patrick is here at the back. Put your hand up. And we collaborate every week. Also, we have to acknowledge the support that we've had from the federal government in addition to this cluster. Through natural resources, there was money transferred to Ag Canada. And what was important, that after we did the initial study that allowed us to select a model, we were ahead of the time. So how do you keep the interest in the farming community? And through that, I called it transition funding, we were able to do some specific projects and get this project going much sooner. The gold standard. And it's not only the 2 pieces of equipment, it's the 4 pieces of equipment. Because from the baler, there's communications to the tractor. There's GPS information, there's performance information. And in the AGCO project that they've done in Iowa, all of that information is captured. With the flail chopper, we're still with a mechanical adjustment. How close to the ground do you go impacts how much biomass you put in the windrow. But solutions are coming on that area so that if you've got a yield map, you'll be able to superimpose it on how much biomass you take in different places in the field. So this was the foray of AGCO coming into Ontario. And at the farm show that year, as you can see from the clouds, we had rain. We had lots of rain. And it was the year that the cornstalks didn't mature. So the baler actually pressed that cornstalk so much that on one day the baler was dripping. This was last year's farm show. We had an open demonstration for any equipment manufacturer. So we had 6 of them. We have round balers and we had square balers. We had the people from Crone, New Holland, AGCO, and the one you can barely see in yellow, that was Vermeer. But what was telling to me from that little bit of work we did over 3 days, there was only 2 equipment companies that contacted me afterwards. So we continued to work with AGCO, and then I got contacted by Vermeer. Didn't get contacted by any of the other ones. So it tells a lot in terms of who wants to be in this market. And the contact I got from Vermeer with respect to a side rake that they've just developed and they want to introduce into the market that might fit this value chain. So I learned from that. The other thing, this tire, 30-inch wide. This baler here, what do you see? Dual axles. We still have equipment out there on lots that are on single axles. And a lot of the work that we do is about sustainability, soil compaction, and those kinds of things. So we have to ensure that the equipment that's going to come on our farms don't do damage, because you won't be back on that farm again. And of course, this is my favorite. This was our tarping exercise. We didn't use tarps. And this year, as you'll see from the next slides, I'll get to next year in a second. We learned about 1 pass and we learned about 2 pass. We're in the Great Lakes. Every time there's moisture built up in the Gulf, we have it 4 days later. So doing a 1 pass is going to be extremely difficult. So our system needs to be built on a 2 pass system. So here it is, the harvest season. We've done baling in the fall, we've done baling in the winter, and we've done baling in the spring. And they all work. We've also did work in the years from 2010 to 2014 on miscanthus and switchgrass, and we know how to handle those feedstock. A couple of weeks ago, it was actually first week of February, we sampled a stack of outdoor bales. Actually, we did more than sample. We processed a stack of 20 bales that had been outside. These bales were baled on December 31st, 2014. So 13, 14-month-old bale. And we chopped it, we sampled it. And what was interesting is that using a probe sampler, we thought we were dealing with material at 35% moisture. Because we chopped it, we were able to get a really representative sample from the pile, and the moisture came out at 18%. So 2 things happened there. We had a better sample, and they took a lot of samples, but also a biological activity took place. Within these bales, there was probably some moisture loss over time, and there was also migration of moisture equally across the bale. And then the wind did its job at continually drying and wickering the moisture towards the edges. So for us, it's important lessons learned. Spring baling, we have 2 million acres plus of soybeans. Nicest time of year, lots of heat to dry the material is between May 1st and May 20th. You can go and plant your beans in most places on May 1st, but I guarantee you the frost will get you before May 20th. So there's a window there to do spring baling. This is Don's favorite graph. Says a lot. Ontario farmers and Iowa farmers are not sitting on their laurels. Every year they look at how they can improve corn yields. And that success of continuously improving the corn yields has created the cornstalk problem. And with the yields that we now have, the Ontario average this year was 170 bushels to the acre, so we have a lot of corn stalk associated and left in the fields that have to be managed. So some of the advantages of removing some of that corn stalk is that you can plant your beans in the soil that is warmer. So what really happened is that on the one farm, these beans emerged 6 days before this poor little bean emerged. So at the end of the year, that translates to a yield boost. And for farmers that are doing corn on corn, that's been quantified in many places at an average of 5 bushels to the acre. On soybeans, we still need a bit of research to quantify that. So another one of my favorite slides, because I had the opportunity to go in Iowa twice at the DuPont project, and I also went once twice actually, at the POET project. So both projects of Iowa have had a good opportunity to visit. This, if you could read, it says the man cave. So that's a mechanic lingo. You need spare parts, you need mechanics that can jump to action, and it's an important part. It's not the baler, it's not the tractors or the flail choppers, it's the guys that make it work. And that's an area here in Ontario that we're going to have to make progress on. These guys here, we were treated to lunch at Subway with a baling crew from the US that are operating in Iowa, but they were from Oklahoma. And we got to spend about an hour and a half with these guys, and they told us how they maintained their equipment. It was their own equipment, and they wouldn't let anybody else use it. But they had a lot of pride in what they did, and from what I understand from Ken Wagenbach, who was monitoring all these baling crews, they were one of the top crews. And I can't overemphasize the pride that they had in being one of the few people that DuPont would allow them to do their own thing. This is the gold. This is gold under preservation. And tarping is a double-edged sword. If you tarp too soon, you capture the moisture inside. So moisture and biomass leads to decomposition. So you got to let the stuff breathe before you throw a tarp on it. Storage, I won't talk much about that. That's an area that in our project for this last year, we're going to do a lot more work about storage at the farm, aggregation yards, and at the bioprocessor level. I think we haven't exhausted the things that we can do to reduce costs. It's crazy to handle a bale 5 times after it comes out of a baler. We got to reduce that. And again, can't tell farmers very much. We produce turkeys, chickens, pigs, cattle, and guess what? We do just-in-time delivery. We understand it. You, as a bioprocessing industry, need to understand it as well. So how do we implement that concept as we move forward to optimize the number of times we need to handle a bale? And don't worry about having material at your plant. When there's a 1,200 employee plant that depends on just-in-time delivery of animals, I think we can do it for you in bioprocessing. And you'll notice at the bottom is a nice diagram, and this is my pitch that next door, where the reception is, I have 2 posters on the project. These were posters that we developed with Ag Canada. And the model you see there was created by Maria. Maria Wallish at Ag Canada worked with me to create the posters. So what we need to do on the business case model is to continue refining it. We're taking the approach of creating a benchmark. I'm not part of a project, and as James indicated, we provided some information. But every time you can beat the numbers that we've aggregated, you should have the assurance you're on the right track. Revenue source. And I think James touched on that, and later this afternoon we'll get the presentations. We got a great story about using C6 sugar. We don't have so great a story on using the C5 and the lignin. And those two components, the C5 and the lignin, need to be further processed to create higher value. When we created the sugar project, we had made the conscious decision. Ethanol did not derive enough or sufficient revenue to make a business case work. We had to go to sugar because the sugar could go into the green chemicals or the clean chemicals of the future. I want also to indicate here in the green, in the green space here. Look at this as a ton of biomass. So you got to pay for your farm costs, you got to pay for transportation, aggregation, processing, financing of a project, and you need a return on investment. All of that comes out of that 1 ton of biomass. So as we can eliminate steps, whether it's at the farm, at transportation, or aggregation, we have the opportunity to reduce our costs. And here's a bale of biomass. It was a creative picture, but there was a few essential things in here. We need to be below 35% moisture. Ash is always a concern, but if we use the right equipment properly, we'll leave the soil in the field and we'll bale the biomass. And the bale density is going to be critical. And the target for the industry is you want to come as close to 12 pounds per cubic feet in terms of density. And then the additional factor you have is the actual bale. These are flakes. So if you have the right size windrow, you have the right speed of a tractor, you have the right settings on the baler, you'll end up with 42 flakes in an 8-foot bale. So guess what? When you're at the bioprocessor and these flakes are going in the system, you have a uniform process in your hands. And this is a solution that the equipment developers were able to deliver for us, and that's why we keep referring to the AGCO baler as the gold standard in the industry, because they're the ones that have come the closest to this. Our first business case, and we were way up in cost, close to $150. We were working with the value chain. We have very poor information. We started going to Iowa. We collected better information. We spent time with the researchers at Iowa State. Plus, we did our own on-farm projects in Ontario. So, based on last year's work, we came out somewhere around 85. And I know we can go much lower than that. And then, as you heard, there will be other projects coming online based on different volumes. So, there's a project at less than 100,000 that is developing. And there's a lot of efficiencies you can build on a smaller project. But as that project duplicates itself, or there's more projects in Ontario, are we going to gravitate upwards, or are we going to be able to take some of the economies of scale and further reduce costs? That's the challenge. So you look at this graph in the same manner. So this is low volume, higher volume, low cost, higher cost, and this is high volume, high cost. So if you have a smaller project and you can work with large farms, your aggregation then becomes a lot simpler. Instead of working with 300 producers, you're perhaps working with 30, 40 producers at the beginning. So as the learning curve of this new value chain is getting going, there's a controllable number of producers to deal with, so that in time, as other projects come, we'll have more experience. There's always other factors. One that is of interest to me is that I know in Ontario we have 700,000 acres of corn in the southwest that have yielded above 150 bushels to the acre. And we have something like 45,000 acres at 200 bushels or more. So we can access our biomass very easily, and for this first project, we need less than 10% of the biomass that's out there. In the future, if we need to start adding smaller and smaller farms, the transaction cost to set up these farms and to get them to accept the system, there'll be a higher cost to that, but hopefully our learning curve can compensate. So knowledge transfer was a big part of our work, and James referred to it. So we fed information to growers, we fed the information to the new Cellulosic sugar co-op, and we continue to advocate the project as we move forward. But these two posters are really of interest to us because we were challenged early on to look at the sustainability of harvesting corn stover. You're a new kid on the block, and there's a lot of environmental concerns because there's no answers. So we worked hard for almost a year with a whole bunch of people to develop these posters, and they're posted in the room next door. Removing corn stover, so we're thinking, well, we're going to get our green chemicals. But really what it means for the farmer, for his income, because I talked about the increased yield. But what if I can eliminate 3 passes in the field to try to work corn stover in the soil? Not only am I reducing costs, I'm avoiding using fuel. So greenhouse gas standpoint, we will benefit as well. We're going to remove phosphorus. More and more as we look at the Great Lakes phosphorus issue, leaving material to decompose on the surface may be great, but the nutrients don't get down into the soil very quickly, because between November and April 1st, we have severe rain effects. So taking some of that phosphorus and putting it into a product where it's sequestered is beneficial. Now, in our calculations for sustainability, we looked at the crop rotation. You have to ensure that there's enough carbon going back to the soil to support the biophysical activities that are going on. You want to keep the bugs happy, you want to keep the worms happy. Then this corn stover removal will also be beneficial for climate change adaptation. We talked about farmers going over their field 3 times. Well, some of the people that do this actually do that in the fall. There was a Gabe Ferguson at OMAFRA at a presentation at the Southwest Conference this past January. there was only 13% soil cover in southwest Ontario. So it means the other 87% was pretty exposed. And of course, we're going to create rural jobs. We're also going to create urban jobs, but the rural jobs are important to sustain our agricultural economy. So this is where we are with our projects. We're, like I said, we're going to continue working for another year, and we're going to refine some of our options to move forward in the future with all of the partners that will be part of this value chain. Thank you.